today. I'm Scotty Foster. I'm one of the co-conveners of the NENA Canberra Hub. Who am I? Well, I spent many years not really knowing how to describe myself, but after hearing Joel Salatin describe himself, I finally found a suitable method to do it. So here goes. I'm a solar-powered radio broadcasting organic growing cooperative creating earth and people protecting lunatic worker from Canberra. That about sums it up. So in 2016, I co-founded and now helped organise Co-Canberra, or Co-ops, Commons and Communities Canberra, which amongst many other things have been designing co-ops in Canberra. We hold our meetups, our regular monthly meetups, in tandem with NENA Canberra. We've decided to go with the two organisations together because NENA's dedicated to being a networking organisation and Co-Canberra's dedicated to actually building the change on the ground through creating organisations. So what are we all talking about here? Let me share my screen here. So hopefully you should be able to see that. And we're looking at a little pyramid there.
Not yet, Scott.
Not yet?
Hang on, it's coming up now. I think it's a bit powered by hamsters, I think. Yeah.
There's that wonderful bar for sharing, which goes right across all your stuff. Right. Move that out, we got it. All right. So this is from John Michael Greer in his book, The Wealth of Nature.
We still can't.
Oh, you still can't see it? Well, I'll just describe it if it's not.
It just popped up.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So this is from John Michael Greer in a book, The Wealth of Nature, which I think is pretty old, but it's a beauty. And this sort of describes everything really in three simple bars. So in this pyramid, the bottom level down the bottom is the broadest, and it provides a foundation for all of the levels above it. If this level crumbles, the whole pyramid is destroyed. It's the level of the non-human natural world, and for billions of years this level's taken care of itself perfectly well without the intervention of humanity. So the middle level, this layer 2, provides a necessary foundation for the one above it, but it's also dependent on the one below it being stable. And this is what we humans can physically do with nature, including other humans. This includes things we can touch, see and smell, buildings, food, goods, that sort of thing. At the top level, it's entirely dependent on the layers below it staying reasonably intact. This is how we as humans agree to organise all of this other stuff that forms our foundations. So this is our collective human imagination, and it includes governing systems like democracy, communism or fascism, legal systems, knowledge systems, cultural relationships like marriage or hierarchy, and even conventions around trade like economics. So it's an interesting way to look at the place. It sort of separates a few different sort of levels of reality for me. But what then if our way of utilising nature is actually destroying it? If our activities at the top level of the pyramid, the imaginary level, are degrading the very foundations on which they rely? So should our comfortable and familiar methods of organising continue, or should preserving the most basic means of our existence take priority? Now, unfortunately, these systems of imagination we've built for ourselves at the top of the pyramid have become more and more detached from the physical world that we inhabit and which sustains us. And through that disconnection, we've become detached from ourselves, from the rest of nature and from our fellow human beings. Our thinking and reasoning has actually become trapped in a purely imaginary world. So yeah, when you get these goons telling you that you're not living in the real world, it's actually the opposite. So some symptoms of this sort of disconnection are increasing global heating and the associated wild weather, which will make many crops difficult and uneconomic to grow. The decimation of our soils due to industrialised agriculture, widespread and regular use of poisons, even on our own food, and the natural diversity of the world is getting wiped out, and with that, our access to resilient life support. So alongside these, we need to deal with peak oil, fossil fuels becoming ever more expensive, billions of climate refugees, and social and economic breakdown as all of these crises begin to bite at once. Well, is that a bit much? Breakdown of society, of the economic system? I don't think it is. I mean, look at 2008 when the whole thing tumbled over because of a bunch of lenders lending money to poor people. But we're all at this conference because we know the system's terminally ill. It's likely to eat everything in its path before it goes out. So I don't think I need to say any more on that to our audience. It's something we need to do for ourselves. Business as usual now means the end of the world, at least the world as we know it. So we have to change, and fast. So we need to evolve society away from its old destructive habits and into an earth-based ecological system. We need a social evolution. So we need our communities as a starter to get to know each other once again, to begin thinking together and organising on a very small scale. Kitchen table conversations are a great beginning. We need to produce for our needs on site and to practice community-scaled, money-free methods of distributing goods and services. If we can get a strong community going, and this is exactly what Dee Brooks was saying earlier, and we've been using some of the ABCD tools in our work in trying to instigate this sort of stuff. I guess if you had a pyramid like that, the community would be the bottom level on which everything else is based. So a strong community is really critical for any of this sort of stuff. Now, commons, if you look at the slide again, so this is a non-commons. So are we seeing this? Yep, cool. So up the top here, you've got capital investors, stock markets, venture capital, and the bank. They want everlasting profits, ever larger profits, ownership and control, or just lots of interest will do. And they do that through investment, or on our side, that's debt. So they create a company with some founders, the company does some stuff, makes some profits. Where do those profits come from? They come from the customers. As much profit as possible comes up from the customers, and as little as possible goes down to the workers. And that means that as much as possible can go back up to those guys up at the top. So they gain wealth, and workers, customers, the community, and the rest of nature lose wealth. We become dependent on the market and dependent on work. Now, in a commons system, all of that stuff up the top there is disconnected, and we're doing everything down here by ourselves. So the community, which includes investors, customers, workers, and founders, all create the cooperative. The cooperative does what it does. It benefits all of these people. So the founders get some sort of benefit, the workers, the customers, the investors are all getting benefits. And there are profits left over, which go back to the community and the rest of nature. We gain wealth, we depend on ourselves. These guys have got less workers and less customers and less wealth. So everybody's happy except for these guys. So that's sort of my idea of the commons sort of system. Now, what is a commons? How long do we have, Wardy? I never found out how long we've got here for this talk.
Mate, I reckon we've got a bit more time. So I think it was an hour scheduled. So
Yep.
You've got at least another 5 or 10, mate.
Great, perfect. All right. So what is a commons? A commons is an asset of some sort. It's the community which relates to that asset, and it's the rules that the community makes to govern that asset. So if we're trying to recommon society, we're trying to recommon the enclosures which have happened over centuries now, trying to get back control, as it says in that slide, over the activities that we need to do to provide for our needs. Let's get that under the ownership and control of the community. We can pay our bills then to these community-owned providers, and wind up actually owning the assets that are providing for our needs. So cooperatives, I mean, not everything can be done without money, and a lot of these commons should be done without money, because with that imminent collapse of our economic system and of our governmental system, we're going to need to be very resilient within our communities. So I forgot to give you the title of this, sorry. It's Designing for Disaster, which is a permaculture concept. As you're designing a system in permaculture, one of the things you look at is what's the worst thing that could go wrong and how are we going to handle that? So in designing cooperatives, not everything can be done while avoiding money, which is a critical thing of that design, avoiding disaster, designing for disaster. So the more advanced and technical activities are going to require people to devote their lives to working in their chosen fields. You need businesses to carry out that sort of level of complexity. So the cooperative business structure is readily available for us in Australia. It's the best system that we've got available for setting up a business in a commons model. Unfortunately, it's also virtually unknown and often disrespected within the established business and legal communities. So what's a co-op? It's like an empty bucket, really. You get out of it what you put in. Just using the business structure isn't enough. The co-op has to be carefully designed to provide the outputs that we want. So a well-designed co-op or active group of any kind, really, will create a commons, and the members will be the commoners who are doing the commoning. A poorly designed group will maintain dependencies on financial flows and authoritarian power structures. So commons can be, and at least some of them should be, designed to meet many of our needs without money, as I've already said. So what are we looking at in this future? I mean, there's highly likely to be conflict. We've got climate refugees, we've got all sorts of things. So if we can attempt to design into our solutions ways to absorb climate refugees in a constructive and beneficial way, rather than say building walls or carrying on like a goose, how can these ideas easily be spread and adapted to other regions? Our only hope really that I can see for saving the situation is to have our new systems really well designed and to have them go viral throughout local communities across the globe. And we've also got to turn our minds to how we can defend ourselves from attacks once we become successful enough to threaten the current order, because they will try things. So we need the courage, imagination and insight to move beyond what's not working and step up to the next level. So our efforts have focused on a thing called the Climate Cooperative, which we've invented here in NENA, Canberra. So a co-op is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. They have the ethics of honesty, openness, social responsibility and caring for others, the values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity and solidarity, and the principles of voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training and information, cooperation among cooperatives and concern for community. So you can see that base, which is enshrined in Australian law, a co-op is supposed to do all of these things as outlined by the International Cooperatives Alliance. That's a really different base from your conventional corporation, which is essentially there to provide profits for shareholders. So what's a climate co-op? On top of those traditional International Cooperative Alliance ethics, values and principles, climate co-ops pop on three more elements. So they've got to be needs-based. We're not producing widgets, we're not mucking around. We just want to get our needs covered so that when the excrement hits the cooling equipment, I guess you'd say it politely, that we can actually provide for our needs. Number two is towards a healthy habitat. So whatever we're doing, we have to make sure that it is drawing down carbon, it's providing for habitat, it's doing other things which are going to be beneficial for the ecology. And number three is to build a regenerative culture. So you can look at these as design principles. Needs-based, again, primary functions concentrating on provision of physical needs. And yeah, we can do wants, but we can do them later. We've got to provide for those needs first. So following natural patterns in design and behaviour is a great one for number two, towards a healthy habitat. So we've got these systems that have been proven again and again over billions of years, and they're the patterns that recur in nature. So we can look towards those for our designs. And regenerative culture avoids past mistakes. We want to create a living, local employment with the involvement of workers in management decisions. We want universal basic assets. So if we can, just by paying our bills to our own companies, wind up owning in common all of the means and all of the assets that provide for our needs, that's universal basic assets. And that'll be very good for everyone. Divestment opportunities, recommoning the enclosures, organising using non-authoritarian, participatory, democratic models, not for profit and for community profit. So we're actually building these at the moment. We're building an interconnected system of these co-ops and communities to cover all of the basic needs in any neighbourhood. As our neighbourhoods all develop these systems, they can combine their strength and a cooperative commonwealth can be formed from the bottom up. So we've begun with the pre-power cooperative system, which is a renewable energy cooperative on 3 separate levels. And it pioneers a way for the community to fund its own renewable energy supply. So the community will wind up owning these productive assets in common, and the profits will go to creating further climate co-ops and to adapt members' housing for the climate which is coming. We're also setting up, we've just started the design of a community-owned farming co-op using influences from Polyface Farms in the USA, Côte Jardins, CSA in France, Mondragon's Cajalabaro credit union system, where they really help enterprises along the way, and a bunch of others around the place. So that's essentially it. We got much time left, Andy, or have we gone?